We'll have about 15 minutes of questions and answers now. Just before we start that, there's an individual I'd like to recognise. When I listened to Arto's presentation there, and I remember back a decade ago or more when Alan Hoare spoke to me about CETA, and certainly I was a doubting Thomas, and now what I see here today is there's no doubt what you say, Leon, and it is happening. This is the future. There is no doubt at all about it, and there's things we need to do to make sure that we make the best use of it. And in Arto's presentation there, he said academia is behind industry. And sometimes, and this is maybe because of the background I come from myself in construction, that sometimes designers are behind the contractors and the suppliers. And I hear mention there of Oran Precast, who for a long time have been a very dynamic company. So in what we do, and I like to think that what we're doing in the Children's Hospital by getting our contractor on board much earlier in the process than is normal in the public sector, that we're recognising that and making sure that we bring the knowledge and the expertise that's in the industry in at a time when you can use it. Because very often design, including the whole development of the BIM model, has long gone past the stage where you can influence it. So certainly that's a message. It's near to my heart because that's the way I've thought for a long time, but it's reinforced by what has been presented here today. That's it. Sorry, maybe I didn't quite finish on what I wanted to say about Alan. Sorry, I went on a tangent there for a second. But Alan genuinely has shown huge vision and leadership in what he has done with CETA, and has, because of what he has done over the years and the team he has worked with, that Dublin is in a position to host a conference like this. So I'll ask you to give a round of applause to Alan for what he has done. And early on, before the presentations, we were chatting here, and I said to Leon that in the Children's Hospital we were using BIM, and he said, why? Right? And of course he was right, well, why? What do you want from it? What does the client want from it? What do the contractors want from it? What do the suppliers want from it? And that's really important, because in a way I didn't think that way. I thought, well, okay, it's good, you should use BIM. And it's a question for everybody, is decide why you're using it. What do you want out of it? And when I see where BIM has taken, and the whole technology has taken, the construction industry, I'm stunned by where the healthcare industry is. And anybody who interfaces with it, and you see the amount of paperwork in everything you do, the amount of time everything takes, and yet it's not clear even now where that's going to go. And no doubt it has to go with technology. But it's when you see, I'd have thought that the construction industry would have resisted change, and it has embraced it. And when I see healthcare, how resistant it is to change, but no doubt that will change as well. So if you'd like to start with some questions now for our two speakers. Have we those? Are those?
How are you doing? Trevor Woods, CPW Group. Two very enjoyable presentations. I've had the pleasure of hearing the two guys speak jointly in Manchester this year, and last year was at Manchester as well. Just in terms of what you were saying, Tom, about doing BIM and using BIM, the problem with the industry here and in parts of the UK is that the industry does BIM. It ticks a BIM box. It doesn't use BIM. We're on the tip of that iceberg. We're concentrating on PDF documents, and that's what we found, as a BIM consultancy practice. People want to tick the BIM box. They really haven't grasped the fact that there's so much more there under the surface. And then going from the iceberg and the ice metaphor to the woolly mammoths in the whole equation, and I'm embarrassed to say I'm a quantity surveyor. And for 5 years I've been travelling to events all over Europe, waiting to meet quantity surveyors who realise the potential that is BIM. And it's embarrassing to say the numbers have not increased over 5 years. I went to a 5D conference in Lake Constance in Germany in May, thinking 5D is going to be quantity surveyors. It wasn't. It was 5 contractors who organised a huge event. So look, quantity surveyors, you've got to step up or you will become the woolly mammoths. And then finally, Arto, your numbers there from JC Canestraro, it's echoed in studies from the construction owners in Alberta, where they found that 37% of workers' time is actually on the tools. 14% of the time is spent waiting for information, waiting for materials. BIM and lean construction, as an awful lot of Irish contractors and some very well-informed clients know, can really unlock that 14% and turn it into profit. You know, we complain about the industry and margins being 1 or 2%. You know, you just have to reach out and try and grasp for that extra saving or potential BIM can give you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yeah. We got the speaker there, please. The mic, I'm sorry, yeah.
Thanks very much.
Sorry.
Thank you. Malachy Matthews from Dublin Institute of Technology, where I'm the academic leader for the MSc programme. Thanks very much for your compliments, Arto. Your presentation is very familiar to me. It is brought forward things that I've been wrestling with when I have designed undergraduate and postgraduate programmes in BIM over the last 5 years or so. And there's a lot of things I could comment on, but I'm going to make this point. My more experienced colleagues in the industry will always tell you that the worst thing that you can do is impose a BIM process on top of your existing process. It's going to cause conflict down the road. So you need to make this realization that you need to create a new process for BIM in order to extract value out of it. Well, the exact same thing happens in education. BIM is disruptive. It's labeled disruptive, rightly so. When you introduce BIM into a built environment undergraduate course or postgraduate course, you need to understand that it is going to be disruptive. And as Trevor says, there are people ticking the BIM box. The last thing that we can afford to do in education is tick the BIM box. In other words, introduce a module to say that you're doing BIM. If you're going to do this properly, there's 2 choices you make. You either embrace it wholeheartedly, which means a complete and utter review of the course that you're doing in order to introduce BIM learning outcomes, which constructively align from first year right up to your final year, or you don't do it at all. Okay? And if you don't do it at all, there's an opportunity in postgraduate education possibly, so that you take your domain-based degree and you add a BIM skill set onto that after you've completed your BIM-based degree. But don't make the mistake of thinking you can introduce a BIM module to tick the box and say, yeah, our architecture course or our engineering course is now doing BIM, because it don't work that way.
Thank you. There's somebody else here, yeah.
Two of them. Thank you. Actual questions. One for each of you, actually. I don't know. I can start with Arto. I'm Frederick Bushy. I'm here at White University. I totally echo lots of things you say. One thing I'm not quite sure is when you say industry is ahead of academia. I know where you're coming from, but I kind of disagree, because if it was the case, BIM would be all over the accreditation requirements, and it's not. So if they're really ahead, they would have required education to do that, and they don't. So in that sense, I don't think we are really behind industry, even though obviously some leaders in industry are much ahead of us. And I would like to know what you think about the BIM accreditation, and then I'll ask my second question.
I didn't quite hear everything that you said. Unfortunately, my hearing disability on that level. But anyway, if I comment about this early modeling, I'm not saying that we should be starting to necessarily use the BIM software in the early modeling, but really the same way as we have been in teaching in the past, using the small physical models. The same way to use some simple modeling tools like SketchUp or things like that. I think that would be helping people to start understanding the spatial design and other things that are really crucial for the architects. And then gradually moving to the more complex information content that you need in the model. But actually, most of the things that I was presenting today is more, I have much more questions that I have answers about that, how we should be doing that. And I'm afraid that that's the basic situation almost everywhere. But it's really something we need. That's one thing that I'm sure is that we need a very fundamental change in the way that we are educating construction professionals in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the issues that we have programs like this, and teaching BIM is about being transversal, which means you need to have different heads of departments talking to each other, agree things, like it's really complicated in that sense, and we face the same issues. My question to Leon, what you were arguing for, you were arguing against the vision of the unified model, and you were talking about this constellation of information, whatever, centers, or whatever you call them, data islands. So in a way, I've been arguing similar things, and in a way the BIM level 3 was giving that image of this integrated one single model. And I've told a lot of people, I don't believe in level 3, and I think level 3 is dead, and we need to rethink what level 3 means. And is that what you were, did I get it wrong, right?
Is this working? I think the original picture with the integrated model on level 3, that was, can I say bollocks again, or is it on? That wasn't the right direction. And yeah, I kind of sense that you agree on that. I know Arto agrees on that. But there's a new document out right now, the strategic vision, just a couple of weeks, on what level 3 should be. And that original vision of one central integrated model is not the vision on level 3 anymore. So I would advise you to have a look at that.
So level 3 is dead, long live level 3.
Okay, thank you.
The reference you made?
You get the, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, could you clarify the reference strategic vision?
Do you know, it said Digital Build Britain, and you just, when you Google Digital Build Britain BIM level 3 for strategic, you'll find it. It's I think it's online, available, just free of download.
Okay, anybody else?
I've got a very simple question to Arto. You said that in a few years' time we won't need to produce the drawings for contractors. So tell me, how do you expect they will construct the buildings then?
Constructability for the yeah. To me, it's one of the things that I really think that we should bring the skills of the whole team into the early stages. I had one project in 1994 which was really changing very fundamentally my own thinking as a designer, because we had a very fast-track project of a big office building, and the client hired the whole team, including the construction company, from day one. And we had weekly meetings where the construction company was commenting about the constructability and the price levels, and that was a very successful project to everyone who participated in there. And I think that one of the big problems we have today is that the clients try to save money by hiring everyone as late as possible with the lowest possible price, which means that everybody is trying to minimize their own workload. And that's leading additional costs in the interfaces between the disciplines, between the different phases of the project, and a lot of mistakes. And in the end, saving is actually wasting a lot of money. And this is something that we should also bring that into the education, that people would understand that creating a good building is not a work that one person can do alone. modern buildings are so complicated that you need a lot of skills and nobody can manage everything there. And we should really respect the professional skills on all levels, not only the designers and the main contractors. It's the same somebody who is really building that thing that we have been designing on building that on site. They can know much more about how to build it than the designer ever can learn. And listening their solutions is sometimes, it's really valuable. And bringing this mentality of the collaboration into education, I think that's one of the most important things. We still have very often in the architect schools the mentality that well, engineers and especially the construction companies are your enemies. You have to fight with them. And the same way the engineers are learning that architects are artists who don't understand anything about the technology. We have to try to correct everything they do. And this is crazy when I think about the mentality in our industry. We are doing the same thing. I think that it was Martin Scorsese who said once that when somebody was asking that what is the secret to make a good film, he said that to make sure that everybody is doing the same film.
Very good, very good. Okay, over here.
Hello, my name is Noel Kennedy. I'm the Intel BIM owner. Just a question regarding, I'll call it level 3 or integrated BIM. Is the problem not really that we're coming from a multi-thousand-year-old workflow and we're trying to transition into effectively an IT workflow? And what we really have is, quite frankly, including me, all the wrong people involved. And that what we need is completely fresh thinking. And it's really, I mean, quite frankly, I think Kimon actually demonstrated level 3 this morning. It would be my interpretation of it at least. And I think, I mean, I really see it as being a cultural transition of a business model that's embedded, a method for making money that's embedded, and the transition is largely, it's actually a transitional problem as opposed to a technology problem or a future workflow integration problem, because manufacturing processes are, quite frankly, built up on full integration and can be multi-party. Anyway, that's Leo.
You should be a keynote speaker somewhere. I think there's a lot of discussion on BIM Level 3. I think it's still pretty unclear what BIM Level 3 will be. I have my opinion on that, but I'm not telling that to a room of 300 people, so we can have a coffee. What I'm worried about, what I'm seriously worried about, is that we all talk about what BIM Level 3 is or should be, and we forget about actually doing BIM on Level 1 and 2. Because that's where it starts. When you start working on BIM Level 1 and 2, then you'll have your own opinion on what BIM Level 3 should be for your organization. And you move along from there.
Okay. Mary, yeah. Speaker here at the front seat, thank you. Microphone again.
Mary Maloney, I'm a lecturer in civil engineering in CIT. I also lecture in the School of Architecture, so I'm an engineer lecturing in there, which is an interesting thing. I suppose we have this debate with my colleague Ted quite a lot, because Ted is very much an advocate of BIM, but I think we still have to remember the place for hand drawings. I think students need to understand the context of scale. They need to be able to sketch something when they're on a building site. I've worked with three-dimensional projects in my former life in industry. It's been around for a long time, but at the same time, a contractor putting a spool of pipe together, fabricating it in the shop, I would find it hard to envisage how he will do that from an iPad. I think a lot of Irish contractors have embraced technology extremely well and are using iPads and that type of technology in our industry. But it's like learning to write. We can't rely on the word processor. We have to understand how to write the words. So I think we still need to be able to draw.
Did you get that, Arto?
Yeah, well, I can say that it's very, very common opinion that drawings are essential part. I'm not so sure. I fully agree with you that understanding the scale, but it's about understanding the real scale of the building. When we design something like this, understanding what it means in the real world, not just in the computer, that how people experience that, how they experience spaces. But I'm not at all sure that it's really something which is dependent on learning first how to make the 2D drawings in scale. Because that's actually quite complicated process and takes quite a long time to translate the real world into the paper representation. I'm not saying that I'm right. It might be that when somebody makes some research on that how we are learning that profession, it might be that it is important to do that on paper. But I'm not, based on my own experiences and looking at how some of the young people are working, I'm not sure if it's true. And that's why I think that we should really be very open-minded about that really think about that is our perception necessarily right? I think that we should question that is the old way of doing. I'm not saying that everything that we are doing in the education is wrong. There's a lot of valuable there. But in my experiences, in a way that in our processes, there are quite a lot of things where some kind of rubbish has been piled up on the core of the things. And we think that is still important. Just to describe that about that, when I was doing in early 90s, I was doing architectural design software myself, programming that. And one day I went and met a leading quantity takeoff and cost estimation company in Finland and started to discuss about these door and window schedules and things like that. And the first response was that, well, what architects are delivering to us is totally unusable because it's totally wrong structured. We can't use that in cost estimation. We can't use that in the procurement. And I was really shocked because it's something which architects don't need and they hate to do. And then you produce a document that the receiver cannot use. What's the point? Yeah. And I think that we have a lot of these kind of things both in education and in industry. And we should now, when we have new possibilities, be open-minded that can we change that? Should we change that? I'm not saying that it's necessarily so that we have to, but I think that we have to think about that.
Claire Penny from IBM. So I guess leading on from that, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and there was an example of a Korean company who had built to the model. So there were no drawings at all, and they just used a 3D model, and they had the schedule and everything. It was really beautiful to see on a slide, right? So it was really nice to see. And they were also advocating that there will be no more as-built drawings. It will just be the model. Do you have is that the future? Is that the way it goes, or?
Yes.
No. Oh. Difficult today.
Do you want to say anything on that? Okay.
Sorry.
No, what she asked is,
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
There was no, sorry. No, she said there were no drawings built off a model.
Yeah.
And there were no as-built drawings. She asked, is that the future?
Well, saying what is the future is, of course, always a little bit difficult to say. But I think that it's really the way that we are documenting things is changing very, very dramatically. When I think about that, how to collect the information, it's also that the virtual and reality, they are kind of merging together. So we will start also collecting directly data from the buildings. It's very difficult to know what is the way of documenting things in the future. Really, I think that it's just that we have to think about these technical possibilities and how to take those findings into the education. Because and of course it means that, as I said in the end of my presentation, that the most important skill is to teach our students how to change. Because that will be inevitable. Whatever we teach them now will be obsolete after some years.
Okay, I'll just take. Nobody else raised your hand. You were first. 2, 3, that's it. Yeah, we're done then. Sorry about that.
Thanks for your powerful and passionate speeches. I'm PhD candidate in Liverpool University. I want just to add something to your talk. When the hand drafting start to computational in AutoCAD, I think those time everyone resists to change, and they say when you're drawing by the computer, it's kill the creativity. But it's true, maybe it's kill the creativity, but at the end, when we want to really, on site, we need that much accurate detail for the site, because through the hand, we cannot have that much accuracy. Am I right? So that time they said we cannot do it, and they resist. Even the really famous architect, they did. But at the end, what we are seeing that is whole change. Now, when we're talking from the AutoCAD, from the computational to the automation to the BIM, so it's not just about the way that we are drafting, because through the hand drafting to the AutoCAD, it was just about the different way of the drafting, not about the whole process that we are doing. So it's gonna be more, significant barrier to this change. But I'm to somehow agree with you and agree with Arto, because this generation, they grown up by 3D, all the games and this stuff, so they can understand it much more better than us, that we are started drawing by 2D. So if they still, I'm saying, okay, it might not change until in the 20 years from now on. Still, we need 2D drawing. But as long as they can model it as a 3D, because I'm a teaching assistant for one of the modules, and I'm seeing when they have some idea, they can model it in a 3D, and they can change a parameter to the grasshopper. And after that, they can model it, they can draw it in a 2D. They can really enjoy it, but they cannot do it through the those material that they have, or by 2D drawing. They cannot even bring that creativity to their
Sorry, no,
model.
I want to pick 2 more questions, and we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So I know you're enjoying it there, but sorry about that. Huh?
So,
do you want to make sorry, there's one here and one at the back. You're okay. Let's go.
So I'm Dr. Sean O'Keefe.
Sorry,
I taught for the University of Southern Mississippi for about 10 years. And one of the ingredients we're missing here with the 2D, 3D argument is quite the focus you mentioned. We don't want them focusing on a tool. So let's teach them down to ones and zeros and how the tools actually work. So I created a BIM program, or implementing integrated practice, before I even knew what BIM was, through the master students top down into the freshmen. We're eventually doing it by the time I left the university. But the part that's missing is understanding details, and the fact that the legal document that we hand over, except in countries like Singapore and certain states and things, it is a 2D document. So I teach the students the cut plane algorithm. Where does it go? What does it cut through? And what do you not model because of the significant amount of polygons for sealant? So you don't just rely on a geometric model, cut through the window, and you miss the sealant on the detail because I model in 3D. There still must be some conception of understanding that, oh, in ArchiCAD, I'm still gonna draw a circle for sealant, because I'm not gonna model sealant for a skyscraper. So, and this is a simple exercise I do with my students with different color markers on a whiteboard, and teach them what they're cutting through the model. The design process, the spaces, things like that, 3D is great, but we can't forget about what we are adding. What is the legal documentation for handover? I understand the time.
Thank you. Last question, please. Yeah, thank you.
Simon Keogh, I'm an architect, and I'm just very interested to position BIM relating to the conference that we're going to have in the Global Climate Conference that's going to happen in Paris in December, and how the targets have been set for 3 degrees in terms of global warming, which we all know are considered at disaster levels as opposed to the catastrophic 5 level. I'm just interested to hear your comments in relating to how do you think that fits in, and how timely it is that these kind of big paradigm shifts that are happening in teaching, in the technology, in the industry. Obviously, governments are making a shift, and now we're maybe the alignment with this kind of shift that we have to make, quite radically if we're going to protect the assets we have going into much more over the next generation.
Do you mind, actually, the hall is nearly empty at this stage. Do you mind if you just do it on a one-on-one? Sorry about that. No. So just before you go, I would just remind you there's 3 stands here with the RIAI bookshop, Hackett's digital 3D printing and Irish building. So if you get a chance, make sure you don't forget them. So thank you all for your attendance.